Please give a warm round of applause, William Irwin Thompson.
When I was in high school and my freshman year at Pomona College, it was sort of the beatnik generation. Then later on I met Allen Ginsberg and Gary Snyder, and that whole tradition of poetry was pretty dominant. And it was pretty much the idea of break away from form, the tradition of Whitman. And I guess because my grandmother was born in Ireland, I had a feeling that this wasn't my poetic tradition and that I really liked form. And so when I was in college, I was kind of an old fart and forced myself to write sonnets and epithalamia and Spenserian stanzas and complex verse forms. And at any rate, I got fascinated with this project, and so part of it required translating from the German the original fairy tale that didn't exist in English. So I think one of the ways you should learn your craft is, don't major in creative writing when you go to college, just take courses in it, but major in something else, whether it, Thomas Pynchon majored in engineering. Writers need to know things. So learn Sanskrit or Chinese or Spanish or Italian. Don't just look, at your own emotions and write about, your boyfriend or whatever, or girlfriend. That's okay too, and I got a few like those in here. But there is a craft to poetry, and some traditions sort of are more wed to the craft, and we've had, since Whitman was so influential, and Allen too, Ginsberg, we've tended to forget that, and I think it doesn't get emphasized enough. Enough said. So the poem, the title of this is a book of 3 long poems, again influenced by the poet Kenneth Rexroth from San Francisco, who wrote a lot of kind of philosophical meditations in the octosyllabic 8-syllable meter. And this one is 10 rather than 8, and it's called Images of History, and it's just sort of walking about and looking. Images of History. Under the low, enclosing, continuous, tin gray clouds of a quiet winter, in an afternoon like any other in practical, unecstatic Zurich, I walk, carrying my groceries back from St. Annahof to the Oberdorf. As I start to cross the Münsterbrücke, a suddenness of unexpected light stops me like a signal changing to red. Just above my line of vision, the crown of Charlemagne in his cathedral niche shines out gold in the low afternoon sun. I turn to track the breaking of the sky and see below the clouds above the Alps the sort of light that touches the king's crown and the golden hilt of the sword he holds in rest and readiness above his knees. He doesn't look to the Paradeplatz to note the battles of the Jews in banks. That was in that period of history when there were all the discoveries of the secret banks, how bad the Swiss banks had been in the Holocaust. So that was a crisis at this time. He doesn't look to the Paradeplatz to note the battles of the Jews in banks. He doesn't glare east to cheer on the Serbs hallucinating battles with the Turks. He looks intently to the south and west, precisely to the place where the sun sets, the undergoing of the evening lambs. What can be out there but the furthest west where Christendom ends and west becomes east as the ocean falls off into the space between the earth and the boot-trampled moon? I grew up there, driving along the edge, watching the sunset, waiting for the earth to crack and drop L.A. into the sea. Their history is no cathedral, but an edifying day in Disneyland. Hollywood would improve on Charlemagne. In an epic film or TV special, they'd show him getting laid by the mistress of the Pope on the night before he's crowned. I get in trouble for that? Okay. I'm a little paranoid. Well, old king, Christendom survived long enough to experience its decline and have its allotted 2,000 years cashed out in untragic banality. 2. Caught by the random recoronation of the king, I begin to wonder what the icons all around me really mean. For the first time, I go into the church, the Gross Munster. I've passed every day without feeling a calling to go in. The Munster is not Chartres or Durham, where one feels the invisibles alive. Rather, it's a Reformation stripped-down structure that's meant to keep you solidly in place, grounded, hard at work, confident enough to skip mystical transcendence. In the Middle Ages, the pointed spires went reaching up toward the celestial spheres, but when the guilds and trade mastered the town, they decided to split the difference between God and man and settle for less, something Swiss, halfway between heaven and earth. So the spires were stubbed off and rounded off. Spires were stubbed and rounded off in exchange for a life of pious wealth. Reading replaced magic, and ministers became bookkeepers holding the accounts. The great book at the crossing, under glass, is on display, but I can hardly read its unilluminated Gothic script. So I turn and descend into the crypt. There, a weather-gouged and worn-out statue of Charlemagne shows me the other as a copy of the king. Perhaps his propaganda, Disneyland, and great moments with Mr. Lincoln is not so far off the money as I thought. Patriotism's patriotism, whether America or Vaterland. I tour the crypt like any tourist, then walk back up quickly and out the church. When I talk about the day's walk that night at dinner, my wife tells me when the kids in her kindergarten, she taught kindergarten in Zurich, that the kids in her kindergarten had an outing to the Munster. They sat down in the crypt to hear the old legend of Charlemagne and the snake and were completely enthralled. She tells me the story over the last of the dinner's wine, in the candlelight, above the emptied plates. I understand what my searching eyes had been hungry for.